Hi, I'm Kira Morellen.
And I'm Zarnagar Khan. Welcome to The Signal, socially distant, coming to you from the University of King's College School of Journalism in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
This week, we're looking ahead to springtime in Halifax Gardens, and you'll meet some divers who are pushing themselves to their limits.
And first, queuing up to fight COVID. We've been lucky in this part of the country in recent months. Nova Scotia has managed to avoid high COVID case counts and the strict shutdowns that go with them.
But it has meant changing the way many do business. Ilya Kurbanov visited a local pool hall where some changes will be permanent.
A simple pleasure like an afternoon game of pool. It's a bit of a treat these days. To make it safer for customers, at Quinpool Billiards, they stopped board games and replaced them with additional pool tables.
We got pool tables and ping pong, and it was a lot easier to sanitize the bowls, sanitize the cues, the rackets, and it was much easier to handle, and it was a lot better and more efficient for our customers and for our business as well. We had a lot of concerns of how we're going to keep it COVID friendly and follow the regulations. Our concerns was to our customers, to our own staff as well.
Even with the two new tables, where people used to play board games, there is enough space for social distancing.
With safety protocols, customers can enjoy a casual game of pool or ping pong.
Quinpool Billiards reopened a little over 3 weeks ago, and it's doing better than it did before the shutdown in November. People were more nervous then.
We just started about a couple of weeks ago right now with the Switch, and we've noticed more and more customers coming on a daily basis, and I believe last weekend I was me and my team working here, and we actually had a full house.
Sharawi hopes that the business continues to do better. It won't go back to the old mix of games and pool whenever everything goes back to normal. For The Signal, I'm Ilya Kurbanov.
And our reporter Ilya Kurbanov joins me now. Ilya, there's a lot of small businesses in that neighborhood. I'm sure they've all had to make some changes due to the pandemic, so changed in the Quinpool Road.
I spoke with Carla Nicholson. She is the executive director of Quinpool Road Main Street District Association, and she said some of the businesses had to make adjustments as well. Dilly Dally, a coffee shop that's located on Quinpool Road, had to remove its parking and turn it into a patio to host more customers in the summer in a safely manner. Another establishment that had to make similar change to its business was Athens, a Greek restaurant. They also removed their their parking lot and turned it into a patio, and it has worked out for them as it was safer and more open spots were available for the customers and to come in and dine in.
And does the association have any program going on that support their members?
Actually, the association started off in the first buying the hand sanitizers, disinfectant wipes, and all other cleaning supplies to help every establishment to remain clean and safe for customers. Currently, it's also given out $250 grants, which they call the COVID-19 safety grants. And that allows businesses to purchase their own necessary cleaning supplies, whether it's hand sanitizer or cleaning wipes or any other supplies that they need to make sure that their establishment is safe for customers and clean for customers, which allows obviously for everyone to stay safe during these times.
Thanks, Ilya.
You're welcome.
As Ilya just reported, the pandemic has changed the way many small businesses operate, sometimes in unusual ways. I dropped into a Halifax pawn shop that shifted its business model to survive in tough times.
Pawn shops are known as lenders of last resort. They lend you money against your possessions until you can pay it back with interest in a short time, or they sell it. But at our local pawn shops like Halifax Buy and Sell, the pandemic changed all that.
And
For several months, we actually had a period of time where nobody would come in to sell any kind of home entertainment or computer homework type items, and it became very difficult to keep those on our shelves.
Plotnicki says federal government programs like the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit, or CERB, made the difference.
And we did see an enormous increase in traffic of people coming through, spending their CERB checks on whatever they needed to secure their needs for work and entertainment at home.
Like other financial institutions, Plotnicki's shop stayed open during the pandemic, even when other retail stores were closed.
Works for us.
Demand was so high and the pawn site so low, he had to look beyond his usual used stocks, buying new products from third-party suppliers.
Through wholesaling, drop shipping, things like that we were able to continue to do business when other forms of business just plummeted.
Plotnicki says he's still ordering from outside sources, but he has learned a valuable lesson in business.
Be absolutely nimble, and don't be afraid to try new things.
But the pawn business is slowly coming back to something more normal, and the short-term, high-interest loans that go with that business are where he makes most of his money. For The Signal, I'm Zarnigar Khan.
Our next story is about a group of divers who pushed themselves to stay underwater longer than you might imagine is possible. Talia Mead has more.
This extreme sport is freediving. What makes it extreme? Well, with no heavy gear, these divers go deep while holding their breath. Nova Scotia record setter Tara Lapointe holds the provincial record for 4 minutes and 8 seconds, but internationally, freedivers can go deeper and longer. Freediving can be a competitive sport or a recreational one for exploration and a challenge, but it doesn't come without its dangers.
One of the biggest risks with freediving is the risk of blacking out, and that's usually a consequence of pushing past your limits, and that's easily mitigated by training and never freediving alone.
Freedivers get into the sport for other reasons too. Some are underwater photographers. Then there are people like Derek McKenzie.
I took this because I wanted to feel better surfing on the bigger days. For me, it's the transferable skills that you take to the ocean. You get comfortable here, and then when you're in the real environment.
The Halifax Freediving Club is one of the only clubs in Canada allowed to train in a pool. Many pools have a strict no breath holding rule, but holding your breath is essential to the sport.
We've done a lot to meet sort of, I think, questions and concerns, but it's partly been on the willingness of some people to have an open mind and sit down and talk about it. The day there is an incident, either in Halifax or Nova Scotia or elsewhere in Canada, that's going to impact on us, even though we've done everything right.
The club now trains out of the Zatzman Sportsplex in Dartmouth, the only pool they could find that would give them a shot.
We went through several pools in the city. Some would not even agree to have a conversation with us. In the North American context, there's not many places that you can access a pool legitimately as a club. It's more often the exception rather than the rule.
Winkler says that people are going to practice freediving at some point or another in a pool, and it's just a matter of providing a safe space to do so. For The Signal, I'm Talia Mead.
This may not seem like the best time of year to think about growing things, but Halifax gardeners are already preparing for spring.
Some of them are still new to gardening. They got into this hobby because of, the pandemic. Kira has more on the story.
When Angela McKinnon looks at this, she is looking forward to this.
I'm someone who's new to gardening, started in COVID, and I'm continuing on to do that. My family and I are very excited about gardening. We just said what kind of things would we like to eat, really. So it's not just growing things for the sake of growing things.
McKinnon is one of many new pandemic gardeners, and as anyone starting a new project, she needed tips. For that, she turned to Nikki Jabor.
How do I get started? Do I need a raised bed? What should I think about in terms of soil? And what are the easiest vegetables to grow?
Jabor is the author of 3 gardening books and one of the creators of the Savvy Gardening website. When the pandemic hit, the views on the website tripled.
We could kind of see it coming, the gardening boom, especially when the news of the pandemic started to spread. We saw an uptick in interest in food gardening as more people started to stay home.
At this Halifax gardening store, sales took off in March last year, and this year looks like another booming year.
They're ordering more just so they have supply. We've been busier in December and January than we certainly expected to be.
It was a lot of fun. So watching it, it's almost like our little babies, watching all the vegetables grow up. And
in Zarnagar, hard times seem to make us want to be more self-sufficient. Jabor says that she saw interest in food gardening go up before, during the 2008 financial crisis, and she expects COVID gardening will outlast the pandemic.
I guess once people get started, they stay with it. What about you, Kira?
Yeah, so working on this story actually made me want to buy more plants. So this little guy joined our house and is just helping make everything more green.
Knowing you, Kira, I'm sure you gave this plant a name.
I did, you're right. The plant's name is Joan, named after Joan Didion.
Thank you for sharing, Kira. So, still on the food beat, a local volunteer is upcycling old fruit. It's her personal project to cut down on waste and raise money for a local food bank. Holly Uffendale reports.
Kelly Loxdale is cooking up something good for charity this winter. Jams, preserves, and chutneys. It's all to raise money that will go directly back to Parker Street. She's been a community volunteer for years, but she only recently started hosting her own fundraisers. In December, she dove into her backyard lake every day. She drew attention to people who have to live out in the cold, and she raised $10,000 for Parker Street. Now Loxdale says she's relieved to be working on something that doesn't involve freezing waters or swimsuits. I spoke with her about what inspired this new jam project.
I think it was seeing produce that came into the Parker Street Food Bank that wasn't going to be able to be used to feed the clients that came in. And when that happens, they end up just having to compost it. So I do love to jam and to preserve and to can, and I thought I'm going to try and see if I can take some of these, pick through some of the fruits that were going bad, and bottle them up.
As someone with a long history of volunteering, why did you start hosting your own charity fundraisers recently?
I just felt moved to do something, especially with the pandemic going on, Christmas coming on, moved to do something that would impact those in my community who needed assistance, and especially working with Parker Street and the work that they do in the community.
What motivates you or pushes you to do what you do?
I think it's just trying to be part of a community that reaches a helping hand to others who live in my community, to be that good neighbor.
And what is your advice for people who might be inspired by you to host their own fundraisers?
I think if you want to do something, pick something that works for you. It might be skipping your daily drive-through coffee and putting that money in a jar, or setting it aside, or something that you know that would inspire your community to join and participate in your activity.
Loxdale has already made more than 100 jars of jam. She hopes to have her Parker Street preserves stacked, labeled, and ready to buy in the next 2 weeks. For The Signal, I'm Holly Uffendale.
That's our show for this week. We'll be back next week with more, including the story of a city charity struggling to find volunteers.
Until then, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at SignalHFX, and find daily news and more at signalhfx.ca. I'm Kira Morellen.
And I'm Zarnagar Khan. Before we go, one more take on the storm that kicked off February.
Holly Uffendale took her camera out as the storm fizzled into rain.
That's all from us. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.